Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True. It's Monday, and we're here with your weekly dose of outdoor industry commentary. But before we get to that, a few housekeeping items. Please follow and rate the Rock Fight wherever you're listening on any podcast app. Follow means subscribe, so you're subscribing to the show, which is what you want anyway. So go ahead, subscribe to the show and leave us that 5-star rating. If you like The Rock Fight, you're definitely going to like Gear and Beer, which is the latest podcast on the Rock Fight Podcast Network. Check it out on its own podcast feed. It's called Gear and Beer. So you can find that on the app you're using right now. And lastly, we want to hear from you. Send us your feedback by sending an email to myrockfight@gmail.com. Hit us up on the socials where we can be found as Rock Fight Co. And all right, let's start the show.
Welcome to the Rock Fight, Rock Fight, Rock Fight.
Hey, real quick before we get to our lead story, part of the Rock Fight extended family is the team at Darby Communications in Asheville, North Carolina, who are having a, let's say, a rough weekend, to say the least. So if you can spare a few bucks for hurricane relief for those impacted by Hurricane Helene, is it Helene or Helen? I'm assuming it's Helene. In the Southeast, check out FEMA.gov.
I prefer Hella.
Yeah. If Hurricane Thor's brother, head to FEMA.gov for places to donate or to volunteer your time if you can. That link is in the show notes if you want to have easy access to help out. So thank you for doing that, and best of luck. And we were thinking about all the people down in the Southeast. Okay, so for our first story today, I wish I could take some credit for discovering this on my own, but it was a listener that would like to remain anonymous that has reached out to point out a quote in a piece that was published last week by The Daily. So last Monday, The Daily ran a transcribed conversation with Andrew Barone, Derek Sigler, and I believe it's pronounced Bertie Pooji from Rosenthal & Rosenthal, which is a finance and factoring firm, to get their thoughts on the current outdoor retail and brand landscape. And the conversation it's largely on par with most conversations for the outdoor industry these days. You know, things like struggling at retail, inventory concerns due to PFAS, consumers dealing with less disposable income, all of those kind of typical talking points. But if you read to the end, there is one point that stuck out, made by Derek Sigler, and this is what that anonymous listener pointed out. And Derek Sigler said, and I'm quoting here from the article, "One of our clients recently met with the CEO of a major outdoor retailer and reported that the CEO sensed a notable shift in consumer behavior on the horizon. He noted that consumers are now more price conscious than ever before and much more inclined to pursue bargain or discounted products, even at the risk of sacrificing quality. In this tough environment, customers appear to be willing to compromise on quality in exchange for lower prices." So I read that and I immediately think, well, let's let the speculation begin with who that major outdoor retailer could possibly be. Knowing that what we know about the current outdoor retail landscape and who is in charge of those retailers, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Sigler is talking about REI here. But even if that is not the case, I kind of find this quote scary for whoever that retailer is. Because any leader of a major outdoor retailer, their words, who believes in a shift in behavior is on the horizon, or that outdoor consumers are more inclined to seek out cheap products, I don't think they really understand the outdoor marketplace. I mean, does cheap and value have a growing place in our industry? Yeah, of course it does. We have more people going outside, most of whom are considered, quote unquote, not core. So there is an increase in opportunity for value products. We also have the ever-expanding opportunity for retailers like Sierra to blow out the obscene quantity of excess our industry produces. But even those outdoor newbies will learn over time that if you stick with this stuff, that value exists in outdoor stuff that is reliable and long-lasting. I mean, Patagonia became known as Patagucci. Yes, it was expensive, but it was expensive because it built a reputation for making incredibly well-made and long-lasting products. So if you're that CEO running a major outdoor retailer and you're planning a pivot to cheap shit because you think you can increase your customer base and capture some percentage of a larger addressable market, well, good luck. It may work out financially, but in the process, you're going to sacrifice legitimacy that you may currently have with current outdoor consumers as well as future outdoor consumers. So, Dave, I'm sure you have some thoughts here. Let's bring you in. What do you think about this?
What do I think about this? Well, the description of that future customer or consumer being focused on price sounds a lot like descriptions of yesterday's consumer who was focused on value and price, which
Maybe even tomorrow's
Which, come to think of it,
consumer?
sounds like today's consumer being focused. Yeah.
Sounds like a consumer.
Right, exactly. It's one of those predictions it's hard to get wrong, right? It's like, yes,
Right.
price will be, I've also found inventory is a big determiner of whether you sell something. If it's not on the shelf, surveys have found that we do not sell it. It's impressive.
Is that what happens?
It is.
You can't sell an idea?
So I guess if I'm taking the outdoor industry as a whole, I would actually assert, as much as we talk about the premiumization of the industry, over time, which it certainly has, and you brought up Patagonia to that, value, and I'll even, let's call it cheapskate, has been a part of this industry also since the beginning. I mean, let's face it, some of our early founders, were kind of based in the whole the whole kind of counterculture movement, the whole back to land, off the grid groups. That no accident that most of our most enduring brands were started in the late '60s, early '70s in the west coast of the United States, from San Francisco to Portland to Seattle. That is not an accident. They line up with kind of that kind of philosophy and ethos that was going on at that time. And I think the spirit of those of people who wanted to take that on and go and explore certainly lines up with that sensibility. So I'm not sure it's a new sensibility at all. And I think your point, the danger is, are we reading those tea leaves as a license to make more cheap stuff versus looking at value as more than price? And I think that's what I see when I see longer term or current state surveys of what consumers are looking for, especially consumers in our space. It's not just the price, but it is the value associated to that item. Is it made with the values that I agree with? Is it durable and resaleable? Can I put it on Depop, or can I, thrift it? Those kind of choices, I think, are even more important than the ultimate price itself, because they are related.
Yeah, I look at this is outdoor retail CEO kind of going off script on the record, right? I would think if an analyst is calling you, getting your thoughts on what's going to happen with your business as an outdoor retailer, and you're like, man, we think the shift is coming, that everyone's going to start buying cheaper stuff. Like, that's, to me, just signaling like you're already well down the road of like, how do we plan for that? Like, how do we kind of get cheaper so that more people will shop at our shops?
And if you look at like adjacent markets and just kind of this super macro, I mean, the luxury market has been down over the last year. I mean, it's still projected to grow over time, but it has definitely seen declines. And so you could extrapolate from that. Oh, people aren't paying for, ungodly margined items. But you could also, like what Nike's going through. I think there has been a dearth of storytelling and brand innovation discussions that giving people something to believe in and be excited about. And I think performance marketing is a part of that. When everything's click-based, and whether I'm getting the pixels to move in the right way at the right time, you're going to lose some of the time that it takes, the patience that it takes to brand build and to bring consumers into your camp so that they are supporters, not just needers, right? In terms of what you have.
So let's honestly, let's unfairly play this out. Let's say that it's REI, right? Let's say we're talking about REI and that, the CEO is planning to kind of go the cheaper route with things, right? So that's not going to be them saying to Patagonia, the North Face, anybody else, like, hey, make cheaper stuff for me. It would have to be more through expansion of like, we're going to carry cheaper stuff in our stores, right? So it's like, instead of going to Walmart, you can just come to REI. We have the same cheap stuff they have there. Oh, and we also have the more expensive stuff. I would assume that's what it's going to do. I look at this as just then you kind of are just setting up for, even more controversy within the core community of the outdoor space. And they're not going to want to shop at your shops anymore. I don't know. I think this kind of then questions your legitimacy and authenticity with the true outdoor consumer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm cynical in the idea that I think what we're going to see is them making the same cheap stuff and selling it at the same high price. Like that. That's not gonna. They're not going to take margin away all of a sudden. Right.
Yeah, but this is they want to attract the consumer who is choosing to spend less. Right. That seems to be what that's their what is it? What's the quote? The notable shift in consumer behavior, that they're more price conscious and they want to address that. seemingly. So it's not going to say we're going to carry the same folks that Walmart is, but they're just going to decontent probably the REI brand. Was what if again this is REI? This is,
Which would be a
maybe it's not REI.
which would be a sizable feat, Colin, if you could continue to decontent that. That I mean, soon you're going to get nothing but just a little packet of buttons and say, "Here's your shirt."
We created the packaging without the product.
That's right. Yes. Yes. It is brilliant. It's recycled paper, it's soy-based inks, and there's nothing inside.
See, what would be in here would be a tent.
Yeah.
But we don't have the tent. We just have the cardboard
right.
wrapper that
That's
goes
right.
around the tent.
Have you considered
Well,
virtual
again,
reality?
Well, this is, again, it's all speculation, but I thought that was definitely a notable quote in a article about what's happening in the space from, again, people who are like evaluating the category.
Yeah, I look, I think going forward, we don't have to worry. The dirtbags and the Gorp Core, they will continue to share the trail, right? There is a place for everybody here. And if that's part of that growing, it's going to be, it's what's going to happen.
Apparently, you haven't heard, Dave. GQ magazine last week said that Gorp Core is dead. So, you are showing your age, frankly, and
right. GQ magazine showing
right.
my age. I gotcha. Right. I'm there.
I did reach out to the journalist of that magazine to see if he hasn't gotten back to me on LinkedIn. And be like, "Hey, man, saw your article. I'd love to have you come on the show about Gorp Core's dead."
Colin, if you do refer back to our early work of Layers, The Rise of Dressing Down, you will note that Dr. Rachel Gross did speak of this trend going back into the 18th century in terms
Correct.
of dressing this part and the money that it takes to do that and how it coexists right alongside that authentic doers of the thing. And so I think that's what we're seeing now too.
I think that's when the elitist white New York City socialites were finding Native women. They say, "Hey, do you have those Gorp Core outfits that I can wear for my Wyoming vacation?"
Buckskin was the Gorp Core of its day.
And described as such,
that's
I believe.
Right. That's exactly right.
Man, I'm heading out west. I got to get I got to get me some Gorp Core.
Yeah.
for my month-long journey to Wyoming territory.
Right before I get swindled out of all of my my gold lease documents.
I'm gonna get right when I get to Deadwood. I got to fit in.
That's right. That's right. Man.
Well, we'll keep. I think whether it's REI or not, we'll keep an eye on what's happening out there. Interesting development here. Well, let's move on because right now it's time for our weekly segment to make sure you're getting more out of the outdoors. It's time for more with Thermore. So let's talk about innovation. And innovation isn't just new ways of doing things. The value of innovation is rooted in function and the need that function fulfills. And speaking of Phil, not like my buddy Phil, like Phil inside your jacket, Phil. Innovation and function.
Is that Phil McCrevis? I know him.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yes, he wears a lot of Thermore jackets, I believe.
I see.
Hey, listen up, apparel designers and developers. If you're not working with Thermore, you're missing out on all of the above. Because if you want to add value, innovation, and function, you work with an ingredient brand like Thermore, with products built to have a high warmth to weight ratio, manufactured responsibly, and a brand legacy that carries an authenticity that can be trusted. Thermore is the partner you need for your next apparel collaboration, because whether it's making amazing new garments or staying warm and safe out on the trail, you can do more with Thermore. All right, so for our main event today, last week on the show, we talked about the growing trend of outdoor brands to launch their own online secondhand shops or quote-unquote Recommerce stores, as well as efforts by brands like Code Epoxy to upcycle using goods and leftover fabrics into new products. Those topics got a huge response from the Rock Fight Army. Thank you all very much for who reached out. So we're going to do a little bit of a Recommerce mailbag. And first up is a friend of the show, Drew Simmons, who called me out on LinkedIn as not being a fan of our take that Recommerce and efforts to upcycle are largely losing efforts when the root of the problem lies in how we make stuff to begin with. And I appreciate Drew's point of view for a couple of reasons. For one, it's a reminder of why the Rock Fight exists in the first place, because our industry is often way too nice, and we need to have a forum to disagree with each other in productive ways. So thank you, Drew, for that. But secondly, to Drew's larger point, that I'm coming down on brands, or I was coming down on brands who are making attempts to do better, and that it's kind of shitty of me to be critical of that. maybe he has a point, because there are plenty of brands out there that aren't doing jack shit to improve their standing when it comes to sustainability and circularity. Now, my take on this isn't to look at an individual, point a finger and say, how dare you not do more? And then celebrate maybe those who are doing something. But I'd rather point a finger at the industry at large and say, is this the best you got? And I think that was kind of the root of the conversation that Dave and I had last week, because for every well-intentioned brand who thinks they're making a meaningful difference, there will be someone who says, oh, that's all we have to do? Oh, sweet. That's great. That's the bar? Oh, we can clear that bar. So I don't want us to get complacent with Band-Aids when there's just more to be done. And that was sort of the larger point of the conversation last week. But I thought Drew raised some fair points, so I wanted to make sure we addressed it here today. Dave, did you have any thoughts on Drew's points? Or at least the call out that, doing something is better than doing nothing?
Well, yeah, Colin, I think what he's just saying is you need to lay off the reused and repurposed pioneers there, Colin. I think your hate and your anger is misplaced.
It's flowing through me.
It is like the dark side that you are. But really, like, I think our point was that this is a huge intractable problem, and a holistic approach, like again with the participation of brands, consumers, and manufacturers and government, are really the only things that are going to meaningfully change this. And at the end of the day, those efforts, while visible and important, are still small and a little bit performative. And look, they are coming, and there will be sizable businesses for sure. But right now, it just kind of fits. And, there's some of that is, you do what you can. Is it low-hanging fruit? Things like that. But we're just pointing out and kind of nudging us towards the tough decisions that are coming up that have to be made by brands. Look, they have to make less stuff, and they're going to have to make it better, and they're going to have to make it closer to home if we want this to work. I think that consumers are going to have to understand that things are going to cost more, and that they're going to have maybe less choice than 150 items of the same thing. Things like that. Manufacturers are going to have to make things with different chemistries. They're going to have to make them more sustainable, and that those ingredients are going to cost more, and the brands are going to have to take that on and figure out how they're going to make it work within their business model. Because look, innovation and invention is expensive. There's just no way around it. And then finally, the government is going to have to create a fair marketplace with the right incentives for consumers, for brands, for manufacturers to make the right choice. And without that, we're just shuffling decks. Nope. Without this, we're just shuffling deck chairs on this massively named shipped Leo DiCaprio. But, or something like that.
No, I think you're right. And it's probably, from a positive standpoint, a more optimistic standpoint, yeah, Drew's right. Like, hey, man, it's good to see brands doing stuff that they weren't doing before. I tend to be a little more cynical on this stuff because I've seen the brands who just sort of like, ape what other people are doing with no really good intentions. Like, okay, great, that's the only bar we have to clear, and it just sort of delays the actual real solutions that hopefully will come. But that actually is a great segue, everything you just said, like kind of into the second email I want to reference, which is from James in Seattle, who kind of honestly validates Drew's point of view in a roundabout kind of way. So James is an attorney, and he writes, and again, I'm quoting from his email, I enjoyed the discussion of brand-led secondhand market proliferation in the last episode. I wanted to add another thing to consider. Regulations may begin to incentivize these kinds of trends going forward. Check out SB 707 in California. It's a textile stewardship bill sitting on the governor's desk. It's a bit complicated, but at a basic level, an entity known as a pro will collect fees for the amount of textile products that brands put to market in California to deal with textile waste. Those fees will be quote-unquote eco-modulated to account for a number of practices that decrease impacts on the environment. One mandated factor to consider is whether a brand has its own collection and resale market. Other factors include repairability, recyclability, and more. So if this law is signed, and as of now it hasn't, California will basically incentivize the Recommerce products we spoke about on last week's show, which, I mean, it sounds much more in-depth to that, but I think that's ultimately what James is pointing to. So I'm kind of conflicted by this. I think there's short-term good here, kind of like to the point of like the optimistic, cynical point of view that Drew and I and you were kind of bringing to the table. But except for what it means when we get to the to the recyclability of this, it doesn't really do a lot to address the long-term problem, and it could in fact delay those long-term solutions from coming to fruition if everybody again just kind of says, "Oh, this is the only bar we have to clear in order to be compliant." What do you think, Dave?
Right. Well, I think again, going back to the holistic approach, this is the government stool of this, or leg of this stool, right? And it's an incredibly important piece. This is all part of what they call extended producer responsibility legislations. EPR is its kind of nomenclature here, and it's really about incentivizing producers to be responsible for their end of life management. I mean, that's what this is. Okay, and so one of the first things that can be done with that is the reuse and repair aspect of it. So these pro groups are producer responsibility organizations. Look, the Democrats have never had a government program that didn't have some kind of new body or board to look after it. I mean, it's part of the deal. But that's what he's talking about. The pro is right. This group that helps manage it, and that's what I mean by creating a marketplace. So this is a longer term solution for this specific action, right? Because it's setting up an even playing field in terms of how brands are going to manage this and how that's going to be done. As we'll talk to some people later on in the coming weeks of, folks that manage some of these third parties that help brands do all of this, the collection, the sorting, and the thing. That's just these huge pieces of it that have to be figured out. And so I think this is a net positive in a big way. The modulated fees, look, really what this is just is another tax code to kind of to pencil around. So they're going to use their resale program as a means to like you said, it's a box to check to get that. Yeah, I get that too. You're going to have them. It's going to be a requirement piece.
But if you're incentivized on the back end, this does nothing on the front end. You're still free and clear to kind of make all the stuff you want and know that you can collect a credit on the back end and send the rest to Sierra.
So here's the thing. This is just one piece of these these EPRs, right? You've got, and this is California's approach right now. These types of things are working their way through, like Oregon is starting to bring this on. New York is kind of ahead of this in their Fashion Sustainability and Social Accountability Act. And that is really... that's more bigger business, $100 million kind of, and 50% of their supply chains. But that's more of a transparency, having to be more transparent about what they're doing. But that's on Scope 3 emissions. That's right. But if you look at France and Sweden and the EU,
that's where the real work's
some of these
done.
where they're creating real economic penalties, if you will, for overproduction. France, especially in their anti-waste law for circular economy. And Sweden, I really like Sweden's approach because they're also looking at both the brand and the consumer side, trying to incentivize both, right? It's a recycling initiative that it puts money into the collection and processing part, but it's also incentivizing consumers to repair rather than discard. See, and it's taking it from both sides like that. But look, I think all of these are going to have little places in, and as they come online and we start to work with them, are they going to be kind of unwieldy and horsey? Yes, they will. They'll always will be. It's gonna, we haven't figured out really how all of this works with small business, which is really the most, the majority of what we're talking about anyway. Most of the waste is coming from the big, but how do they deal with these issues? Because some of these could be so onerous as to prevent businesses from even being able to be successful. But it is going to be a new normal, but a lot of that has to be worked out. And like I said, implementation is always, that's where the devil is in those details. And but we got to start.
And if this is a step in the right direction, like I am all for it, largely speaking, because if you go back, and this is a bit of dated information because it's when Ken Pucker was on the show back in the beginning of 2023, but you talk about the New York Fashion Act, which you referenced, and at the time when Ken was on the show, which is all about disclosure and what are your Scope 3 emissions and all those kinds of things, there was was it zero? It was either 0 or 1 outdoor brand who was actually supporting that. Right. So flying directly, and this is why I'm cynical a lot of things. It's like, here's something that can legitimately be good for the earth in terms of how we're making apparel, and only 1 or potentially 0 outdoor brands were supporting. Now, that might be higher now. Like I said, it's dated information. But that's, so if this is the step 1 to get to there, and especially with what we learned from the legislation that has passed over in Europe on top of it all, great. But, It's this is we'll have to see how this all shakes out, because we also heard from Aaron Provine at Gear Trade. He wrote back in, and Aaron's been on the show before, and Peter Whitcomb, who is at Tursus Solutions. Both of those guys we want to bring on the show in the next few weeks or so for individual conversations. And then later this week, we're going to be talking to Baruch Ben Zakri, who's from Out and Back. So we want to keep this conversation going, because this does trickle down all the way from, from the biggest of the big to the independent, outdoor retailers who are going to be, what does this mean for everybody? What are the stories that are being told? How does this stuff get used? What stories do you want to tell to your consumers? This is kind of the issue of the day, if you will. So
it is, and again, I think it's just really important to understand there is no silver bullet to all of this. And, if we pull out individual initiatives by themselves, they seem kind of small or,
Right.
or misguided in that. But it's really when you put them all together is where you start to see kind of this overall change. So I think we're behind the 8 ball. We could have been doing this a while ago, but we need everybody. PFAS. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the last thing I had in here was like, look, I guess, and this is probably back to Drew's point, I'd be a little more optimistic. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where the dominant message around sustainability was, oh boy, we have some recycled content in our stuff, and that was what we pointed to and celebrated every time it happened. And now that is the norm. And here are hopefully the evolution of the conversation. I just was hoping it would go a little faster,
Right. Well, when it does go faster, we'll be here to talk about it in slow, painstaking detail.
Breaking news on the rock fight. Let's go.
That's right.
All right, we'll take one more quick break, and then we'll get to our parting shots. This episode of The Rock Fight is brought to you by the Great Malden Outdoors, an outdoor enablement campaign in the city of Malden, Massachusetts, and the brains behind this initiative, Darren Josie. He's here with me right now. Darren, first of all, what is an outdoor enablement campaign?
An outdoor enablement campaign provides 4 things: advertising, resources, programming, and youth development. These are the 4 things that I believe are really important to getting more people outside.
So why is this campaign important to DEI efforts in the outdoor industry?
We have to start by getting more people outside, and that can start their journey from 1, becoming someone who just enjoys outdoor recreation as a lifestyle, but 2, a path for a job. No one told me that going outside and rock climbing could lead to a job one day, or fishing, or bike riding. Didn't know that was a thing until I got into the industry, and I want to change that and start that journey a lot earlier for way more people in our society.
Hey, man, and lastly, how can outdoor brands and retailers help or participate?
Go to thegreatmaldenOutdoors.com, click on the contact button, and reach out. We are always looking for donations for gear, funds, and expertise. You can lend your existing staff to lead an online course, or if you're in the New England area, come on down and lead a class. We're looking for more programming.
Head to thegreatmaldenOutdoors.com and click contact to build a partnership today. All right, it's time for our parting shots.
It's time to end, it's time to leave. This place that time forgot. Let's take our rock and head on home. It's time for our parting shot. It's time for our parting shot.
All right, Dave, you have the floor. What's your parting shot?
My parting shot, Colin, I'm back to books this week. And I'm trying to kind of hit the classics for those that maybe haven't seen or heard them, or just haven't know about them, haven't taken the time to dive in. But this is one of my all-time favorites. It's Cadillac Desert by Mark Reisner. It's all the way back in the 80s. I can't believe it's that long ago, but it's been updated. And I guess if you were to call something a seminal work, this would be it, in terms of it outlines the water management systems in the American West. It highlights the environment, the political, the consequences of these large-scale irrigations, the damming projects. It discusses how we got here, the dams and canals, and the fights over who owns them, the creation of the reclamation board across the country, and the incredible power that they had in the mid-century. Again, a time when science and technology were being seen as our saviors, and really contributed to the overbuilding of dams and the consequences, the environmental consequences that we're still living with today, and just the mindset. And it's it's amazing that I'm like pumped up about a water policy book, but it weaves incredible stories of how the city of LA formed, how the Colorado got to be used and portioned. It's like I said, it's got some incredible personalities and figures that dominated kind of the bureaucracy at that time, and we're talking billions of dollars that flowed through states. It was a nationwide thing. It's not just the West. The West kind of gets the focus. It's kind of the Chinatown, like the idea of Chinatown was obviously before that, but how can you make a kind of this topic kind of sexy and taut with conflict and interest, and just it's really well done. I really recommend it highly. Cadillac Desert. I think it's one of those that you just have to have on your shelf in terms of explaining kind of where we are today and why. So big fan. Cadillac Desert. There's also a PBS documentary about it that was done in the 90s. If you prefer that.
Jeff Bezos, we know you're a listener. You can sponsor Dave's Specs Book Corner.
That's right.
During the party shot every week.
Colin, I have to say, I'm from Portland. There's only Powell's.
Oh yeah, that'd be a great sponsor. Pals, come on board for Dave's Book Corner during the party shot.
There you go.
My party shot was news came out this week about Lululemon and its 4th annual Global Wellbeing Report. And in there, the brand found that there is a, quote, counterproductive cycle where the relentless pursuit of well-being is making us less well and experiencing what the report dubs as, quote, well-being burnout. And I heard another podcast talking about this, and of course, the host of that show started talking about the opportunity for Lululemon to lean into that messaging and utilize this and to pivot into a new type of marketing. Did I just say fuck that? I like this is just like I can't believe that we're gonna start branding burnout in the outdoor space, and then we're gonna try and like capitalize on that as well. Because this is where we need to put the onus back on the consumer and say, grow up. Right? Do we feel external pressures to behave or look a certain way? Absolutely. But not enough of us learn from that and then make our own choices to be healthy and not burned out. Well-being burnout is a choice. Brands and influencers are absolutely going to play into your insecurities and exploit them, but you don't have to let them. There's plenty of times I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do today. I got to optimize this. I got my watch on. And all of a sudden you're like, God, I'd just rather go for a run. So you know what you do? You turn it off, as hard as that is, and just go for your run. So this story just got my blood boiling. So I say, fuck well-being burnout. I guess Lululemon, good work for reporting on it so that I could get so angry, but that's my parting shot.
Well, okay then. I guess we're just going to let it sit at that.
That was like an OG, like back in the beginning, rock fight.
It was. I was going to comment on the 55% uptick in well-being burnout, and but also too, if you look at the countries that they cite as being the most burned out, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Malaysia, United States, all of those have a strong Murdoch media presence. I'm wondering if there's any correlation between that. I'm not sure, purely anecdotal.
That's a good point. Your FKT pursuit might be fine if you weren't like getting pummeled with like shitty news stories 24 hours
all
a day.
The time, right?
Yeah,
all the time. Doom scrolling and wellness probably don't go together.
While you're tracking your run, you're like doom scrolling with your other hand.
That's right. Boy, I don't feel very good about myself. And
just put music on and go for your run. Go for your bike ride. Go for your hike.
That's right.
That's the Justin Hausman way.
Oh, well then.
The Hausman method coming this fall from Rockfight Books.
Oh, I like that. I'd subscribe to that.
I would too. There's a magazine we should publish. The Hausman.
I think
the Houseman.
The Houseman. That's right.
All right, man, we can wrap it up there. Thanks for listening, everybody. The Rock Fight, it's a production of Rock Fight LLC. Our producer today was David Karstad. Art direction provided by Sarah, the big winner, Gensert. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out. Jen doesn't like him anymore. It's Krista Makes. And he's here to sing the Rock Fight fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock